Delhi has chosen regulations over persuasion. For nearly a decade, India's electric vehicle transition has largely been driven by incentives, whether it is subsidies, tax exemptions, or awareness campaigns. While these measures have accelerated EV adoption across several states, Delhi's new electric vehicle policy 2026 marks a decisive shift in approach. Rather than merely encouraging consumers to choose electric mobility, the government of National Capital Territory of Delhi has introduced a policy that gradually changes its methodology from persuasion to mandates. Yes, mandating the transition to zero emission vehicles in its key segments is the main prerogative of Electric Vehicle Policy 2026. Effective 1st July, the policy combines financial incentives, regulatory mandates, and charging infrastructure expansion with fleet electrification and the battery circularity into the comprehensive framework aimed to make Delhi one of the world's leading electric mobility city by 2030. The Gazette notification clearly establishes that the policy's overreaching impact is to reduce air pollution while accelerating the adoption of electric vehicle and developing the charging infrastructure required for charging at the same pace and promote domestic innovations in clean mobility technologies. Unlike the previous 2020 policy, which focused primarily on market creation through subsidies, the 2026 policy seeks to reshape the transport ecosystem by influencing consumer behavior, public procurement, urban planning, and industrial development simultaneously. Above all, this announcement is of close to 15,000 crores over the next 4 years. That signals that it is one of the largest state-level commitments toward clean mobility in India. Well, Delhi was indeed in the need of such a enthusiastic and transforming new EV policy. Delhi's air pollution, as you know, is the challenge which is no longer merely an environmental issue. It has evolved from a public health and economic imperative. According to the policy rationale, if I have to build, vehicular emission constitute one of the largest contributor to the city's deteriorating air quality. Particularly, the PM2.5 concentration has been increasing day by day, and in winter it literally chokes Delhi. Two-wheeler accounts for nearly 2/3 of Delhi's vehicle population, while commercial vehicles and auto rickshaws contribute disproportionately to daily emissions due to their high utilization rates. Recognizing that incremental improvement would be insufficient, the government have adopted a structural transition strategy. Rather than waiting for market forces alone to drive electrification, the policy establishes clear timelines for phasing out new registration of conventional vehicles in selected categories. This reflects an important policy evolution from supporting EV adoption to planning the gradual exit of internal combustion engine vehicles. That is the ICE vehicle that you presently use, which are petrol, diesel, and CNG vehicles. The three pillars of Delhi EV strategy are the financial support, the regulatory mandates, and the infrastructure expansion for charging for these electric vehicles. Let's start with the first pillar, that is the financial support to accelerate adoption. The policy introduces purchase incentive across priority vehicle categories, particularly electric two-wheeler, auto rickshaw, and light commercial vehicles. Also, there is a scrappage incentive of 1 lakh that has been introduced for individual replacing eligible older BS4 or earlier petrol and diesel cars with electric cars priced below 30 lakh rupees. Road tax exemption, registration fees, waivers have also been made part of this electric vehicle policy, which is substantially lowering the cost of ownership of these electric vehicles. The design of these incentives is noteworthy. Rather than offering perpetual subsidies, the financial support declines over the first 3 years. signaling the government's expectations that the battery prices, manufacturing scale, and market maturity will eventually reduce the dependence on public support. Let's detail the purchase incentive which we get from an electric two-wheeler standpoint. For example, you go for a registration of your electric vehicle two-wheeler. The first year from notification you will get an incentive of 10,000 per kilowatt hour to a maximum of 30,000. In the second year you will get 6,600 per kilowatt hour incentive with a maximum of 20,000, and in the third year you will get 3,300 per kilowatt hour with a maximum of 10,000 rupees incentive for the purchase of electric two-wheelers. Now with this eligibility, if you say the ex-factory price should not exceed for the two-wheelers that has been set is 2.25 lakh rupees. Applicable only to the eligible battery electric vehicles. So it is very clear that hybrid vehicles will not be part of this. Benefit available under prescribed conditions will also be mentioned. That is, sometimes you buy a slow moving electric vehicle and that is having a Chinese CKD kit in it, so that will not be part of this. So you have to make sure that it is ARAI approved and registered vehicle. If we carefully watch what exactly is there in this incentive structure for two-wheelers, rather than providing a flat subsidy, Delhi has linked incentives to battery capacity, that is rupees per kilowatt hour. This approach rewards higher capacity battery while capping the financial exposure of the government. The declining incentives over 3 years also signals an expectation that these falling battery prices and economics of scale will gradually reduce the need for public transport, which is very important. Another important incentive is for electric auto rickshaws. See, whenever we travel by these auto rickshaws, they are usually CNG or the conventional ICE engine based auto rickshaws. For electric auto rickshaws, in the first year you will get an incentive of 50,000, for the second year it is 40,000, and for the third year it is 30,000. The key point here is, in auto rickshaws operate significantly higher daily kilometer than private vehicles, making them one of the most impactful segment for emission reduction. Prioritizing this category maximizes environmental benefits per rupees of public expenditure. So that is why it is so important to decarbonize these auto rickshaws. Then another category, which is electric good vehicle, N1 we call it. N1 is the code which has been given by the Ministry of Transport towards the electric good vehicles. The incentive structure is pretty simple for them. First year is up to 1 lakh rupees and subsequent year as notified under policy provisions going forward. The inclusion of N1 commercial vehicle is a significant shift from previous policies. Urban freight contributes disproportionately to the emissions. You might have seen so many commercial four-wheelers on the road. The emission due to extensive daily usage has been predominant. It is one of the major polluting factors. Electrifying this segment supports cleaner logistics while reducing operating costs for fleet operators as well. Another incentive is being given towards road tax and registration fees exemption. The financial benefits are as follows. Battery electric vehicle cars up to 30 lakh gets 100% road tax exemption. Registration charges are also 100% exempted, and a strong hybrid vehicle there is no exemption under this final policy. So this is the government is only looking forward for battery electric vehicles being supported under this. So the final notification departs from the draft by excluding strong hybrids, if you might have noticed. This reflects the government's strategic decision to direct fiscal resources exclusively towards zero tailpipe emissions technologies rather than transitional technologies. So that has been the government's stand. And apart from that, there is one major scrappage incentive which I would also like to mention. Vehicle replacement scheme, or any BS4 or older car replacing the replaced by this electric cars will receive 1 lakh scrappage incentive. And this is eligible for first 1 lakh applicants. So this is also important that first 1 lakh applicant will receive this. The scrappage incentive addresses two policy objectives simultaneously: removing older cars, higher emission vehicles from Delhi roads while accelerating a demand of electric cars. This dual purpose design increases environmental benefits compared to the standalone purchase subsidies. Apart from this, let's move to the second important pillar, that is the regulatory certainty. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of the policy is its regulatory roadmap. From January 2027, only electric auto rickshaws will be eligible for new registration. Beginning April 2028, Delhi will discontinue the registration of new petrol and CNG two-wheelers, effectively making electric vehicles the default choice for new buyers of the segment post April 2028. Importantly, the policy does not prohibit existing ICE vehicle from operation. Let me repeat, the policy does not prohibit existing ICE vehicle from operation. So you can drive your present vehicle which you are having, thereby balancing environmental ambition with consumer practicality. So government has taken care of this practical issue, that what will happen to the present people who already run these vehicles. So they are not banning it, they are having a practical approach of phasing out these vehicles. This phased transition provides manufacturers, dealers and consumers with a predictable implementation timelines, reducing policy uncertainty while encouraging long-term investment in their asset which they have procured for their daily commute. Now, the target of this policy is to be achieved by 31st March 2030. So, next 4 years will be transitional for the Delhi infrastructure. So, these are the regulatory mandates and the timelines. In addition to that, the infrastructure has to be deployed at scale. So that is the third most important pillar of this policy. Vehicle electrification cannot succeed without charging infrastructure. Recognizing this, the policy places significant emphasis on expanding charging facilities through streamlined approval, digital deployment platforms, battery swapping infrastructure and mandatory charging facilities at dealerships. Unlike earlier policies that treated charging infrastructure as a support measure, Delhi now positions it as a core public utility essential for large-scale EV adoption. Massive charging infrastructure expansion is being planned. If I have to specify, Delhi plans to significantly expand its EV ecosystem through around 32,000 public charging points across the city. In addition to that, battery swapping infrastructure will be deployed, single window clearance or charging operators will be there, dedicated digital platform for charger deployment will be there, and mandatory charging facility at every OEM dealership will be required to be given. Apart from that, Delhi Transco Limited, the transmission company of Delhi, has been designated as the nodal agency to oversee planning and implementation. Not just this, even the government and school fleet have to go electric. The policy also targets fleet electrification. All new hired or leased Delhi government vehicle will be electric. All new DTC intracity buses will also be electric, and gradually the school buses will be electrified. In first 2 years, 10%, Next 3 years 20%, and by March 2030 30% of the school buses are being mandated to go electric. Now another interesting fact is the focus on battery recycling. Recognizing the growth of EV ecosystem, the policy also introduced measures for battery traceability, safe recycling, second life battery applications, extended producer responsibility, and battery collection centers across Delhi. So that is also a phenomenal step by Delhi government, which government has taken for educating and taking steps towards these battery collection center after their end of life. So what makes these steps different? Delhi has taken so many policy steps in this one particular EV policy that several Indian states have announced such attractive EV incentives. But then what Delhi have done different, we can have say 3-4 points addressed to it. The first point is it has moved beyond incentives by creating mandatory transition pathways for a specific vehicle category. Second, it integrates multiple policy domains: transport, urban development, energy landscape, public procurement, and environment regulations within a single framework. Third, it recognizes that electric mobility extends far beyond private cars. The policy simultaneously targets two-wheelers, three-wheelers, commercial vehicles, government fleets, school buses, and charging infrastructure, ensuring that the segments responsible for the largest daily emissions are prioritized. The integrated approach reflects growing global consciousness that successful decarbonization requires coordinated ecosystem transformation rather than isolated financial incentives. The announcement for investment of 15,000 crores over 4 years signals one of the largest state-level commitments towards clean mobility. Beyond improving air quality, the policy is expected to stimulate investment across multiple sectors: electric vehicle manufacturing, charging infrastructure deployment, battery swapping services, battery recycling, and digital charging platforms will also be integrated into this. The most important aspect is power distribution upgrades, renewable energy integration, green financing, and insurance are also part of this complete policy directives. For charging point operators, distribution companies, and battery manufacturers and energy service providers, Delhi could emerge as one of the India's largest urban clean mobility market over the next 5 years. Well, with all of these policy initiatives which are being planned, there will be also challenges that could be faced by the Indian EV ecosystem industry with this rollout of electric vehicle policy in Delhi. Although it is ambitious, implementation will determine how successful this Delhi EV policy will be. The first challenge is charging infrastructure readiness. Mandating EV adoption without ensuring convenient and reliable charging could create consumer resistance, particularly among apartment residents and commercial fleet operators. Secondly, electric distribution networks will need significant strengthening. Fast charging can impose high localized load on distribution transformer, and then there will be a necessity of investment in grid modernization, smart charging, and possible battery energy storage ecosystem integration. Third, manufacturing capacity must expand rapidly. With mandatory electrification of two and three-wheelers approaching, OEMs will need to ensure that sufficient production volumes should be there, and affordability needs to be also maintained while producing these electric vehicles. Consumer confidence also remains critical. Concerns regarding battery longevity, resale value, charging convenience, and financing will continue influencing purchase decisions despite financial incentives. Finally, battery recycling systems and end-of-life management must develop alongside EV adoption to ensure that today's clean mobility solution does not become waste management challenge at a later standpoint, wherein all these vehicles will be approaching their end of life, and the batteries should not be dumped into various garbage and in those places wherein battery couldn't be recycled. Beyond mobility, implications for the power sector are also evident. One of the most overlooked aspects of the policy is its impact on Delhi electricity ecosystem. Large-scale EV adoption will increase electricity demand, particularly during evening charging. This presents both a challenge and an opportunity. If unmanaged, simultaneous charging could increase peak electricity demand and strain distribution infrastructure. However, with smart charging, time of day tariffs, rooftop solar integration, and battery energy storage systems, EVs can become flexible load that supports grid stability rather than undermine its strength. This creates new opportunity for Delhi's distribution company, charging operators, and renewable energy developers while accelerating the city's broader energy transition. Well, can Delhi achieve its vision? Delhi's EV policy 2026 represents perhaps the most comprehensive urban transport electrification strategy attempted by an Indian state. Its greatest strength lies not in the subsidies it offers, but in the clarity of its long-term vision. Investors, manufacturers, and consumers now have a defined policy signal extending to 2030. However, success will depend on coordinated implementation across government departments, distribution companies, municipal agencies, manufacturers, and charge point operators. Regulatory certainty alone cannot deliver the transition. It must be supported by adequate infrastructure, financing, consumer confidence, and institutional capacity. If implemented effectively, Delhi could establish a replicable model for other Indian cities grappling with severe air pollution. If implementation falters, however, ambitious mandates risk outpacing market readiness. There could be a sad story to it. So we have to be very much cautious towards rolling out this EV policy and its opportunity as well as challenges. So to conclude, the Delhi EV policy 2026 is far more than an electric vehicle incentive scheme. It is a blueprint for restructuring urban mobility. By combining fiscal incentives, regulatory mandates, infrastructure development, and ecosystem creation, the policy acknowledges that decarbonizing transport requires systemic changes rather than incremental improvements. Whether Delhi ultimately succeeds will depend less on the policy document itself and more on the execution. Yet one conclusion is already evident: India's clean mobility transition has entered a new phase. The conversation is no longer about whether electric vehicle will replace internal combustion engines, but about how quickly government, industries, and consumers can collectively manage that transition. For policymakers across India, Delhi has raised the bar. The coming years will reveal whether this bold experiment becomes the template for urban mobility nationwide. How did you find this video and this analysis? Do mention in the comments below. Also, please follow, like, and subscribe the Chetan Pathak vlogs for more such videos and insights on the electric vehicle mobility ecosystem, renewable energy, and various emerging technologies. Thank you. Have a nice day. Jai Hind.